Very good morning to one and all gathered here. So, it's at the outset, I would like to convey my heartfelt gratitude for the organizers of the CME for giving me this opportunity. So, the topic for the next few minutes is like psychobiotics. Are they the future of psychiatry? So, many a times, there are some products which we can potentially use as add-ons, and sometimes we get to understand there are so much of benefits that it confers. But this topic really was so interesting when I was preparing, and there was so much of articles. So let's go into the topic. So the agenda of my discussion would be like to introduce you to the topic and to briefly touch upon the microbiome gut-brain axis and psychobiotics. How do they act? So do they act, and how do they act? And psychiatric illness, psychiatric illness per se, do they have any link with the gut microbiome? And what is the evidence base for psychobiotics in a variety of these conditions? So we all know that our digestive system is our second brain. So basically, if you look at our whole gastrointestinal system, so it is very unique in the sense that it functions as kind of an autonomous or a semi-autonomous body. It has its own nervous system, enteric nervous system, comprising of 50 to 100 million nerve cells. And from the immunological perspective, there are more immune cells in the gut wall than the blood and bone marrow put together. So it is very immunologically rich. Like whatever food we ingest, it may contain some toxins or bacteria or some hazardous products. But then the gut wall is so important that it protects our integrity, mounts an appropriate immune response, eliminates pathogens. It is also started with a lot of endocrine cells. So the gut interacts with the system through the blood. It sends a lot of endocrine hormones into the system appropriately. Gut-brain axis, we are all aware, it stores the body's 95% of body serotonin rests in the gut-brain axis. So this serotonin plays a very crucial role in a lot of domains like sleep, appetite, pain sensitivity, mood, our overall sense of well-being. So it's needless to say that whatever psychiatric illness that we are dealing with, it has an impact on all these domains: sleep, appetite, pain sensitivity, somatoform disorders, mood disorders. So a lot of things are there. So coming to the gut microbiome. So though it is called micro, how micro it is? So the gut microbiome is like 1 lakh times there are more microbes in our gut than the people on the earth put together. So that is the volume of gut microbiome in one person. So when did it all start? When did it start? So it was way back in 1674 when the father of microbiology, that is Antony von Leeuwenhoek, called these things as animalcules. So when he was trying to explore with a single-handed lens, he was trying to see some tiny moving organisms in the fecal matter, in the teeth scrapings, in a pond water. So he was so interested and intrigued, he called them small animals, animalcules. This was in 1674. Where have we progressed now? In 2006, the Human Microbiome Project was started by the US NIH, where it was, the primary objective was to try and categorize human microbiome and also explore the potential liaison or the potential intermediary between gut microbiome and psychiatric illness, or as a contributing thing for human wellness. One important astounding research finding in 2017 as a result of this Human Microbiome Project was microbes contribute more genes to the overall human behavior and overall human wellness or illness than the human genes itself. In fact, bacteria code more protein coding genes 360 times more abundant than human genes. So there are a lot of research articles which says like the gut microbiome are the majority, are they using only the human system as a colonizing thing to modulate our behaviors? So are we modulating our gut microbiome, or our gut microbiome modulating us? So it's a very open-ended question. Gut dysbiosis is associated with a variety of neurodevelopmental disorders ranging from autistic spectrum disorder, ADHD, IBD, anxiety, neurodegenerative and cognitive disorders like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, lot of autoimmune conditions, and metabolic disorders also, not only psychiatric portfolio, even common metabolic conditions like obesity, and diabetes mellitus, lot of other metabolic portfolio is linked with gut microbiome. So why are we so bothered about it? Because this offers us a potential target for interventions, not only therapeutic but prophylactic also. So can we do something to maintain a healthy gut microbiome? So to take the topic forward, the communication between gut microbiome and the central nervous system involves multiple neuroimmune metabolic circuits, vagal pathways, gut hormones, endocrine peptides. Maintaining a healthy gut microbiome is a crucial and essential part of preserving our overall mental health. So in a lot of psychiatric disorders, though we have a wide portfolio of psychiatric drugs, are we still settling fine? No. We have a high relapse rate. There are various types of disability. There is increased non-adherence, which Dr. Paneerselvam sir rightly spoke about the previous session. Treatment resistance. We don't know what to do or what else to offer to our patient. So in this context, are we looking at something which is very potential, which is not so side effect prone, but which is easily available? Then the answer is focusing on the gut microbiome. So if you look at, this is the same thing that we discussed. The microbiota gut-brain axis the microbiota interacts with the brain through a variety of pathways. So through the immunological pathways, the gut wall has a lot of immune cells, it has a lot of T cells. Through the neuroendocrine systems, by secreting peptides, through enteric nervous system, they have their own mechanisms. Circulatory system, vagal pathways. The secretions can be peptides, gut hormones or neuroactive substances. It can be microbiota derived products or microbiota derived metabolites. So primarily the gut is in dynamic interaction with the brain and the overall system. So coming to the topic per se, psychobiotics. What are they? Psychobiotics are nothing but live organisms which when we ingest in adequate quantities, it confers a health benefit in patients suffering from psychiatric illness. So psychobiotics are basically live organisms. So the other way of looking at the definition is, they are defined as probiotics, which are live organisms, which confer mental health benefits to the host when you ingest it in a specific adequate quantity over an adequate time period. It also dynamically interacts with our own commensal gut bacteria. So what are the 6 biotics that all of us are supposed to know? So prebiotics. So what are prebiotics? Prebiotics put simply are the food for the probiotics or the healthy bacteria in our gut. So common food items, whatever we eat, like common ingredients that we eat, like green leafy vegetables, fruits, onion, garlic. So all these things feed the commensal gut bacteria. They are not alive or active per se, but they feed the commensal gut bacteria and the probiotics. So these are prebiotics. What are antibiotics? We all know. What is probiotic? We just said that they are live organisms which confer a health benefit. Symbiotics is basically a combo of the pre and postbiotic. So you take the probiotic and the prebiotic together in a specific combo to optimize your health benefit, then that is a symbiotic. What is postbiotic? Any guesses? So postbiotics are not antibiotics. They are some other group of drugs, but they significantly lower the gut microbiome symbiotic condition. For example, even a lot of psychiatric drugs, especially most notoriously drugs like olanzapine, have a lot of antimicrobial properties. They significantly alter the gut microbiota when a patient consumes it. So such drugs are called as postbiotics. So psychobiotics is basically this prebiotic, probiotic, symbiotic, all these things put together, which dynamically interacts in a fashion to promote the patient's mental well-being. So probiotics we already explained. It's a viable microorganism taken in sufficient amount, it's in an active state, it provides a positive health benefit. So commonly used strains are lactobacilli, bifidobacteria, enterococci, streptococci, some strains of E. coli, etc. So probiotics traditionally, though there are many, there are a lot of next generation probiotics also. So it's very difficult to pronounce, but we need to understand there are so many probiotics and there is so many research pointing on what are the probiotics which are beneficial. So the other half of the slide is just to indicate that a lot of these gut microbiome significantly produce neurochemicals. So dopamine, norepinephrine, GABA, serotonin, acetylcholine. So a lot of these things, they are very, very active when we look at it as a as something which produces a neurochemical, they are very, very active, they are very, very alive. So we can't really ignore them. So what are prebiotics? As I already mentioned, they are selectively fermented ingredients which allow some changes in the composition and activity of the gastrointestinal microflora. So they are basically some oligosaccharides or some non-digestible molecules which are helpful in promoting the probiotics. Symbiotics are synergistic combination of pre and postbiotic. So as I am explaining this, we can all conceptualize a full traditional meal of a South Indian diet on a plantain leaf, is it not? So many of our diets are rich in probiotic and prebiotic food. To highlight very common thing, probiotic rich Indian foods like curd, dosa, commonly used things, no? Idli, paneer, so buttermilk. So they are very rich in probiotics, lactobacilli and other probiotics. Prebiotics, the food for the probiotics commonly used in our kitchens. So onion, bananas, legumes, bread, garlic. So all these things are rich in prebiotics. So when we look at the psychobiotic food pyramid, so on the bottom lies the whole lot of prebiotic foodstuff. So the veggies, fruits, whole grains, nuts, herbs, spices. So typically when you have a very diverse meal, not very choosy and picky, then you are definitely going to get a lot of prebiotics in your system. And also a lot of probiotics. So among the non-vegetarian food options, seafood and fish are rich in probiotics. So, and fermented food are also rich in probiotics that are recommended to be taken often. Weekly basis, poultry, eggs and other dairy products can be taken on a weekly basis. Eggs are as such not a very rich source of probiotic or prebiotic. On the top of the ladder, we have the rarely recommended food items, sweets and red meat. So both sweets and red meat, they don't have any pre or probiotic content on their own. On the contrary, if somebody consumes this in a large quantity and compromises on the bottom, then what will happen is our gut will move from a eubiotic state to a dysbiotic state. So why are we so bothered? So basically because when the gut microbiota is acting in a symbiotic fashion, the health is preserved, and when it becomes the top-down model or the reverse of it, when somebody is consuming a high-calorie food, sugars and red meat, but not consuming adequate amount of vegetables, fruits or probiotic-rich food, over time what happens is your gut microbiota goes into a dysbiotic state, which predisposes us to a lot of chronic disease conditions, not only from the psychiatric portfolio, but as I already mentioned, a lot of metabolic conditions, autoimmune conditions, neurological conditions are implicated. So how do probiotics act? So probiotics act by inducing a lot of immunomodulatory mechanisms. They have a direct protective effect against physiological stress. It downregulates the HPA axis. As I already mentioned, our food contains a lot of pathogens, but when you are taking a probiotic in a right proportion, in adequate quantity, it inhibits the pathogenic bacteria or a pathogenic growth in the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome itself gets modulated when you are consuming a probiotic. So it interacts with the commensal gut bacteria. Just like DNA, each of us have a very different gut microbiome. So whenever we consume a probiotic, it is going to always dynamically interact with the native, our own gut microbiome or the commensal gut bacteria. It also, all these psychobiotics act by improving the barrier functioning of the colonic epithelium. So colonic epithelial integrity is hypothesized in a lot of conditions. For example, in conditions like leaky gut or inflammatory bowel disease, which is very common in a lot of psychiatric conditions, colonic epithelial integrity is a main culprit. So this is the same thing put in some other way. So the probiotics modulates the primary gut microbiota, it modulates, and what happens is it makes it more symbiotic, it reduces the gut dysbiosis, it reduces the gut inflammation, and it maintains the gut barrier integrity. And also it reduces the lot of pro-inflammatory cytokines in the system. So when you are taking a probiotic, the inflammatory pathways are downregulated, the cortisol pathways, the HPA axis is downregulated. There is upregulation of neuroprotective factors like BDNF and upregulation of neurotransmitters like serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine and GABA. Basically it acts by epigenetic mechanism. So epigenetics is how we can modify our environment to modify our gene expression. So genes are there, but then how can we modulate the expression of the genes? Is there something that we can do? Definitely probiotics offer promise. So the same thing in some other way, the psychobiotics basically control the overproduction of inflammatory cytokines. It synthesizes neurochemicals, counteracts the stress that changes the gut microbiota, abolishes lipid peroxidation, intestinal barrier stability is maintained. It inhibits dysbiosis from the pathogens that we consume in our daily food. It modulates or upregulates the BDNF factors. It also improves the level of omega-3 fatty acids. It plays a direct role in neurotransmitter modulation. So this is in short about how important gut microbiome is, how psychobiotics confer a potential health benefit. So coming to the question that runs in all of our minds naturally, what is the evidence base? Do we have any recommendations to use psychobiotics in our daily practice? So the available research are done on 3 settings. One is the vulnerability. Like for example, they haven't developed the illness, but in a vulnerable population, you administer a psychobiotic and try and understand whether it has a prophylactic effect. The second setting is in a well-established diagnosis of psychiatric disorder like schizophrenia, mood disorder, substance abuse. When you give a psychobiotic, does it confer any benefit? Many of these studies are also on preclinical models where mice models, fecal microbiota transplantation is done to mimic the illness. So for example, the fecal microbiota of a patient suffering from schizophrenia is getting transplanted in the mice model. Then the mice develops the same behavior. The behavior gets modified to mimic a pathological condition. Then the psychobiotics are administered and the results are monitored. So it's a lot of these studies are in the mice models. So already there is so much of gut microbiome diversity. It cannot be, we don't deal with a homogeneous population because gut microbiome itself is unique. And already we are giving our patients a lot of medications. For example, psychotropic use adds to the complexity in interpreting the results of these researches because antipsychotics and antidepressants significantly alter the gut microbiome diversity. So a lot of these research or the studies are looking at the gut microbiota after the onset of illness. So what was there before? We aren't sure. Olanzapine is the most researched, and as I already mentioned, it significantly lowers the gut microbiome diversity, alters the food preferences. So what's already known in this area? There exists a definite difference between patients, those diagnosed with any form of psychiatric illness, and the general population when we look at the gut microbiota. It is not the same. The association between the gut microbiota changes and the onset or the relapse or the persistent of psychiatric conditions is difficult to explain basically because the gut microbiota is looked at after the onset of the psychopathology. So the inherent challenges in interpreting these results are there is a high heterogeneity of microorganisms investigated. So there is so many microorganisms, there is a high heterogeneity. What products are administered, it varies between each research. One research administers lactobacillus, one research administers bifidobacteria, one clostridoid species. So how are we going to really understand it in a whole? And paucity of well-designed trials and long duration trials are not there. So only short duration trials, say for example 12 weeks, 16 weeks. So it's very, very short duration trial. The results are given. So next I'll be only touching upon the major psychiatric disorders and what is the current evidence which I can put for you. So in general, all mood disorders have decreased gut microbial diversity. So it is not about a single bacteria which is less or a single bacteria which is high, but there are studies pointing out at some specific families of gut microbiome which are specifically affected. So I mean it was really surprising to me when I understood that even the family wise there are researches. So this family of Ruminococci, other genus are all especially affected in mood disorders. Probiotics containing bifidobacterium and lactobacillus exert a positive effect on depressive symptoms. Probiotics containing clostridoids as add-ons to antidepressants showed significant improvement in all scales of mood disorders like Hamilton Depression Scale, Beck Depression Inventory, Beck Anxiety Inventory. Why are we really looking at probiotics as such a promising thing? because the tolerability is very good. So we all know how much of our medicines, antipsychotics, antidepressants, how well tolerated are they. So a lot of SSRIs cause gastritis, a lot of SSRIs cause nausea, antipsychotics cause nausea. So we have a better tolerable drug which can also be used in special populations. So a lot of research is also tried on lactating mothers, children. So special population, very elderly population with a lot of neurocognitive domain complications. So in special populations, again, it is researched. In mania, I couldn't come across any specific convincing studies. But as such, in a depressive portfolio, it offers some benefit. In anxiety disorders, there is a significant decrease in gut microbiota diversity and the richness of the gut microbiota as compared with healthy controls. And as these Fusinetobacterium and some other species are specifically lower in anxiety disorders. And also in anxiety, there is a lot of inflammatory pathways which get inappropriately triggered. So inflammation of pro-inflammatory, increased pro-inflammatory species and lower short-chain fatty acid synthesizing species. So short-chain fatty acids are protective. So when it becomes less, then the inflammatory mechanisms are also more, then the person is more predisposed for an anxiety spectrum disorder. So administration of probiotics associated with improvement in panic, neurophysiological anxiety, the muscle sensitivity, pain sensitivity, negative effect, worry. So these are some domains where there is some research pointing towards beneficial effect of probiotics. Plasma cortisol levels, pro-cytokine levels were reduced in subjects with anxiety receiving probiotics. So basically, it offers some benefit. Coming to schizophrenia. In schizophrenia, in a drug-naive schizophrenic population also, there are a lot of alterations in gut microbiome, which is hypothesized. So alteration in metabolites like short-chain fatty acids and changes in neurotransmitter pathways, decreased BDNF levels, immunity impairments. So is schizophrenia something to do with the neuroimmunospectrum? It is a new area now. So immunological impairments are very common in schizophrenia population. So are we looking at schizophrenia? If we look at from the gut microbiome perspective, these alterations in the short chain fatty acids, changes in neurotransmitters, decreased BDNF, immunity impairments, they are hypothesized as intermediary stages between gut microbiome dysbiosis and the onset of schizophrenia spectrum disorder. So the gut microbiome is the primary culprit, but what happens is the result of it. So the neurochemical hits are the final things that are there. So are we only looking at the neurochemical hits and ignoring the gut microbiome altogether in schizophrenia? So a lot of antipsychotics, what we add on for schizophrenia is also going to make the situation more worse, because antipsychotics have been associated with the potential to cause metabolic dysfunctions, again through microbiome alteration. So when the gut microbiome is significantly altered, the patient's food preferences, lifestyles, whether they are going to go for an exercise, be sedentary, choose a healthy food versus a junk food. So a lot of dynamic things are there. Gut microbiota in schizophrenia may be associated with neurostructural changes, psychopathology severity, subclinical inflammatory processes, and higher cardiovascular risk also. We all know for a fact that in schizophrenia there is an early mortality predominantly due to cardiovascular complications. So is gut microbiota playing a role there also? So when probiotics are given as an add-on to antipsychotic treatment with patients with schizophrenia spectrum disorders, they are well tolerated and there are some benefits that is improved. There are some benefits that are reported. So it is explored as a potential add-on, not as a monotherapy. So vitamin D3 and probiotic combination are also specifically researched in schizophrenia. So when I was looking at the articles of probiotics in schizophrenia, in lot of research they have combined probiotics along with vitamin D3 in this population. So vitamin D3 up to 50,000 IU every 2 weeks along with probiotics are given as a supplementation, and usually it is all short duration trials and it is periodically reassessed in 3 months. Then there is some significant improvement in the scores that is reported. But with the current evidence base, the recommendation for administration of probiotics in schizophrenia could not be supported research-wise, but there is a potential benefit of this intervention when the schizophrenia spectrum disorder is also having a mood disorder. So many a times in patients with schizophrenia, they can have a secondary mood disturbance also, predominantly depressive symptoms also. So addition of probiotics along with vitamin D is very promising in this subsect of population. So this is basically what we already discussed. In a healthy gut eubiotic state, there is good amount of short chain fatty acid synthesis, and it significantly influences our behavior in terms of like choosing a fiber rich food, exercise, healthy lifestyle, and also it contributes to a better immunity and a better mental health. In a schizophrenic situation, when patient has schizophrenia, based on the genetic mechanisms, there are already a lot of neurochemical hits that the person is vulnerable to. But if we try and work on the epigenetics or try and add psychobiotics, modulate the gene expressions, modulate the gut microbiome, then we can significantly alter this box, that is junk food, physical stress, smoking, alcohol, drug abuse, so compromised immunity, CNS disorders. So basically we are looking at the modifiable thing in the whole lot. Coming to the next area, that is substance abuse. Many research combining probiotics and substance abuse has been on alcohol. So chronic alcohol use is associated with increased oxidative stress, increased intestinal permeability to different bacteria, produce toxic factors, which precedes the onset of alcoholic hepatitis. So in animal models, mice models, what they have done is they have exposed the mice to a chronic binge alcohol exposure for 10 days. So another set of mice, the same alcohol exposure along with symbiotics. So when there is an addition of symbiotics, so symbiotics basically means probiotics and prebiotics together in a combo. So when the mice model are given symbiotics along with the chronic binge alcohol exposure, there is decreased hepatic steatosis, and also the injury, the hepatocyte injury is significantly lesser in animal models. So what they hypothesize basically is, like when there is in alcohol use and in lot of other substance abuse, the gut intestinal permeability gets affected. So when the when the healthy mucosal barrier is lost, then you are naturally getting exposed to a lot of toxic pathogens from the food, and which triggers a lot of cytokine pathways, interleukin pathways in the gut wall, and liver being the first hit from the gut, the onset of hepatocyte injury, the steatosis, inflammation, long-term cirrhosis. So all these things gets early onset if somebody is having a deranged gut microbiome. So that is for substance use disorders, predominantly alcohol. Then coming to neurocognitive disorders, effects of psychobiotics or fecal microbiota transplantation, probiotic supplementation, improved cognitive functioning in a wide set of neurocognitive disorders. In patients with cognitive impairments of varied causes, maybe Alzheimer's, maybe a hepatic encephalopathy, maybe HIV-associated dementia, maybe dementia associated with major depressive disorder, Parkinson's, these adjuvants of probiotics provided favorable results on different cognitive tasks, specifically the tasks that involves visuospatial memory, set shifting. So there are specific cognitive tasks which are much better when we administer probiotics. The cognitive functioning significantly improved in the individuals using probiotics versus placebo after 16 weeks, that is after 4 months in treatment with mild cognitive impairment. So probiotics increase the serum BDNF levels and also change the composition of gut microbiome, favoring a gut microbiome eubiotic state. So in neurocognitive disorders, irrespective of the primary diagnostic label, it offers a potential benefit. Although currently there is not enough data to recommend the use as such as a monotherapy, but the results are very encouraging in terms of varied cognitive domains. So by modifying the gut microbiome, we can significantly reduce the inflammation and the oxidative stress. And elderly population, they are tolerating the psychobiotics very good. In very few reports, there are reports assessing the tolerability of psychobiotics. Usually they are well tolerated without any adverse drug portfolio. Next, a mention about eating disorders. What they have found out is in eating disorders, anorexia nervosa, patients with anorexia nervosa, their feces, when they are trying to analyze, so what was found was there were lower levels of a lot of neurotransmitters and the gut microbiome is significantly different. So colonic dysbiosis is hypothesized to cause the behavioral change in patients with eating disorders. Dietary modifications, probiotic, prebiotic, symbiotic administration, fecal microbiome transplantation have been conceptualized as possible interventions. And also another area in eating disorder, one is in anorexia nervosa, the other area is patients with obesity. So in obese population, when psychobiotics are administered, they did not significantly influence the body weight, but remember that these research findings are very, very short term. But what was significantly reported was it significantly decreased the fasting and postprandial glucose levels, improved the insulin sensitivity and improved the lipid profile. So maybe over a long duration, if somebody is working on psychobiotics, maybe it can also potentially be a therapeutic option in tackling obesity. So at present, the data is inconclusive in specific eating disorders to have any recommendations. Coming to autistic spectrum disorders as high as 40% of children with ASD have a functional gastrointestinal disorder. So functional GI disorders are frequently comorbid in autistic spectrum disorder. So is gut biosis the first or the common hit? And autistic spectrum is one manifestation and functional gastrointestinal disorder is another manifestation. So the common origin of gut dysbiosis is suggested. So potential benefits of psychobiotics is in reducing gastrointestinal discomfort, improving autistic spectrum disorder behaviors, changing gut microbiome composition and reducing the inflammatory diathesis. So the duration of the study is all for only short term. In a 12-week study, the administration of probiotics significantly altered the behavioral scores. Also, when the autistic spectrum children are having a functional gastrointestinal disorder, it is more beneficial. Regarding the core ASD manifestation, the data that is currently available is inconclusive. But if a child is having ASD along with the functional gastrointestinal disorder, then probiotics can be considered. Coming to ADHD, inattention, hyperactivity, impulsive symptoms improved when the gut microbiome composition changed. Basically, in a child population, we are dealing with a developing brain. So there are a lot of research which points out at working on this vulnerable sect even before the onset of disorder. An interesting study, this is the longest study that I could find when I studied on this topic. An interesting study followed longitudinally for 13 years, a group of 75 infants randomized to either receive lactobacillus over a placebo in the first 6 months of life. So they were given only in the first 6 months of life, and at 13 years, they were monitored for ASD, Asperger's and other disorders. 17% of the subjects were detected with ADHD symptoms in the placebo group, but none in the probiotic receiving group. So the study is pointing out at a potential prophylactic intervention at a very early onset. We are all struggling or we don't have enough interventions when we have a full-blown autistic spectrum or ADHD. So when the developing brain is there and the developing gut microbiome is there, can be intervened very early in the infant stage. A potential prophylactic effect is hypothesized. So what is going to really turn out in future, we are yet to wait and watch. So to conclude, the data supporting the efficacy of psychobiotics, primarily probiotics as adjuvants in the treatment of psychiatric disorders is currently mixed because the research are all short duration and only specific domains are explored. Short-term studies, heterogeneous interventions, the diverse population is only studied. The data is inconclusive. Definitely there is a potential advantage in cognitive disorders, depressive disorders, schizophrenia, substance use. The need for more well-designed trials focused on specific probiotic strains, focusing on the inter-individual gut microbiome variation, more homogeneous phenotypes of psychiatric disorders. So we are awaiting more well-designed trials in this area. But are probiotics going to be the future of psychiatry? Definitely, I think we will know better in a decade or so. So these are my main references. My main reference is a wonderful research paper in Frontiers, 2023 published, the current state of research of psychobiotics in the management of psychiatric disorders. So it was really an eye-opener for me. And this book called The Mind-Gut Connection by Emran Mayer, it was also a wonderful book where it just speaks about sticking on with a typical native diet, not going for a Western diet and all that. So I would like to end my session by quoting Albert Einstein. So the intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. So what is our gut feeling? So I am glad to answer queries or take up discussions. Thank you so much once again for the wonderful opportunity.